The great archive floated in the darkness between stars, a massive station that held the memory of 1,000 civilizations. Inside its crystal walls, Ambassador Curran moved slowly through rows of ancient data cores. She was old, even by her species standards, and her translucent body flickered with dim light as she searched through records that most had forgotten. She stopped at a sealed vault marked with warning symbols in 50 dead languages. Inside were the last messages from the predecessors, a race so advanced they had simply vanished 12,000 years ago. No one knew where they went or why they left, but they had left warnings, and Curran had spent her entire life studying them. One message repeated across multiple formats and languages. It was simple and terrifying. If the primates of Sol 3 reach the stars, run. Do not fight them. Do not capture them. Do not assume you understand them. They are not like you. They do not think like you. And they will never, ever stop. Curran had presented these warnings to the Galactic Council dozens of times over the centuries. Each time the younger species laughed. The Council ruled over 10,000 worlds and had kept peace for 8,000 years. They had weapons that could shatter planets and shields that could stop stars. What could a species of primitive apes possibly do to threaten them? Far across the galaxy, in a region the Council had marked as Quarantine Zone 773, humanity was about to answer that question. Captain Kyle Brennan stood on the bridge of the frontier's edge and watched the stars slide past on the view screen. The ship was humanity's pride and joy, a massive colony vessel carrying 10,000 people toward a new world. Kyle was 42, with gray hair starting to show at his temples and lines around his eyes from too many years of hard decisions. He had fought in the corporate wars on Earth, seen cities burn, and lost friends to violence that accomplished nothing. This mission was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be about hope. "Captain, we're holding steady at .8 light speed," said Lieutenant Nina Hayes from her station. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes and faster reflexes than anyone Kyle had ever served with. She had graduated top of her class at Space Command Academy and could calculate jump trajectories in her head faster than the ship's computer. "Good. Keep us on course for Kepler 442b. At this speed we'll arrive in 7 years and 9 months, Kyle said. He allowed himself a small smile. 7 years in deep space with 10,000 colonists. It would be challenging, but they were ready. The alarm system screamed to life before anyone could respond. "Contact! Multiple contacts!" Nina's fingers flew over her console. 12 ships just appeared on our sensors. They came out of faster-than-light travel right on top of us. Kyle's blood went cold. Humanity had only achieved light-speed travel 5 years ago. They had no FTL technology. No other species had ever contacted Earth. The galaxy was supposed to be empty. Battle stations. "All hands to battle stations," Kyle ordered. His voice was calm despite the ice in his chest. "Nina, what are we looking at?" "The ships are huge, Captain. Each one is at least twice our size. Their weapon systems are hot. They're powering up shields." Nina looked up from her screen, and Kyle saw fear in her eyes. "Sir, we can't fight this. We don't have the weapons." On the view screen, the alien vessels came into focus. They were beautiful in a terrible way, sleek and predatory, covered in armor that reflected the starlight like dragon scales. They formed a perfect sphere around the frontier's edge, cutting off any escape route. A communication signal pierced through their systems with such force that several consoles sparked and died. When the transmission cleared, they saw their first alien. Commander Vexithara of the Zynthian Empire stood 7 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. His eyes were cold and calculating. "Primitive vessel, you are trespassing in Zynthian space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Your ship and crew will serve the Empire. Resistance is futile and will result in destruction. You have 1 of your minutes to comply." The transmission cut off before Kyle could respond. "Sir?" Nina looked at him, waiting for orders. The entire bridge crew was watching. Kyle could feel the weight of 10,000 lives pressing down on his shoulders. "Open a channel," Kyle said quietly. "Channel open, sir." Kyle stared at the blank screen where the alien commander had been. "This is Captain Kyle Brennan of Earth's colonial ship Frontier's Edge. We are on a peaceful mission to colonize an uninhabited world. We had no knowledge of your empire or your territory. Request 1 hour to discuss terms and avoid unnecessary conflict." He cut the channel before waiting for a response. "Sir, what are you doing?" Nina asked. "They're not going to negotiate." "I know," Kyle said, "but I'm not asking for that hour to negotiate." I need that hour to figure out how to fight them. Vex Thara watched the human ship on his tactical display and laughed. The sound echoed through the bridge of his flagship and his officers joined in. Humans. The scans showed they were barely out of their Stone Age by galactic standards. They had fusion drives and kinetic weapons, nothing that could threaten a Xinthian warship. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. Grant them their hour, Vex Thara ordered. Let them talk among themselves. Let them realize how helpless they are. Then we will take their ship intact. The Empire will want to study these primitives. He had never heard of the predecessors. He had never read the warnings in the Great Archive. He thought the humans were prey because they had weaker weapons and slower ships. He made the same mistake that countless predators had made on Earth throughout human evolution. He assumed that being prey meant being helpless. On the frontier's edge, Kyle gathered his senior officers in the sealed conference room. Chief Engineer Pete Morris was there, a broad-shouldered man with oil stains on his uniform and a gift for making broken things work. Security Chief Lisa Grant attended, a former Marine who had killed her first enemy soldier at age 19 and never forgot how to fight dirty. Dr. Henry Cole, the chief medical officer, stood quietly in the corner. He looked like a grandfather, gentle and kind, but Kyle knew Henry had worked in chemical weapons research before joining the civilian medical corps. "Talk to me," Kyle said. "What do we have?" Pete spoke first. "They disabled our main drives with one shot. Surgical precision. But they left our secondary systems intact, including the weapons grid and the manufacturing bay. I think they want to capture us, not destroy us. How long to restore main drives?" Kyle asked. 3 days minimum. We'd need parts I can't manufacture. Then we work with what we have. Lisa, your assessment? The security chief pulled up a tactical display. We have 200 trained soldiers on board, all veterans. We also have mining equipment, including nuclear charges designed to crack asteroids. The aliens are holding position 800 meters away. That's close. Very close. Too close, Nina added, understanding immediately. They're not expecting us to fight back. They think we're beaten. Kyle looked at each of them in turn. Here's what we're going to do. Pete, reroute all power to weapons. I don't care if we lose life support. We only need to survive for a few minutes. Lisa, prep your people for a boarding action. But we're not boarding their ships defensively. We're going on the attack. Henry! The doctor met his eyes and nodded slowly. I understand, Captain. I have compounds in the medical bay that are banned on Earth. Very illegal. Very deadly. Make them ready, Kyle said. Nina spoke up. Sir, even if this works, we'll lose the ship. Most of us will die. I know, Kyle said softly. But if we do this right, humanity will know we didn't go quietly. And maybe, just maybe, these aliens will think twice before attacking the next human ship they find. The hour passed. Vex Thara opened the communication channel expecting surrender. Instead, he heard one word that would echo through galactic history. No. Then the humans attacked, and everything the Xinthians thought they knew about warfare died screaming. The weapons fire lit up the darkness of space like a newborn star. The frontier's edge had redirected every single watt of power into its weapon systems, sacrificing shields, life support, and gravity. The ship was dying, but it was dying with its teeth bared. Commander Vex Thara felt the impact before his sensors registered it. His flagship shuddered as kinetic rounds tore through sections that should have been protected by shields. Alarms screamed across the bridge. How were the humans even firing? His tactical officer had confirmed their weapon systems were offline. Return fire. Destroy them! Vex Thara roared. But his weapons officer was already dead. A control console exploded across his station from a power surge caused by the human attack. On the frontier's edge, Pete Morris died with his hands welded to the power controls, keeping the energy flowing even as the feedback burned through his body. He had rerouted the ship's entire fusion reactor directly into the weapon grid, bypassing every safety system humanity had ever invented. The weapons weren't just firing. They were overloading with each shot, burning out as they discharged but taking Xinthian ships with them. Lisa Grant was already in motion. She and her 200 Marines had cut through the hull of the frontier's edge from the inside, using mining lasers to create breaches. Now they erupted into space, wearing armored suits and carrying nuclear mining charges meant for breaking apart asteroids. Each charge could yield 50 megatons. Each Marine carried 2. Go, go, go. Lisa screamed into the squad channel, her voice cutting through the chaos. The Xinthian ships were so close that the Marines only needed their suit thrusters to reach them. The aliens had positioned themselves for an easy capture, never imagining the prey would attack. A Xinthian point defense system came online, tracking the incoming Marines. It cut down 20 soldiers in the first 3 seconds, their bodies vaporizing in the energy beams. Lisa watched her people die and kept flying. The Xinthians had superior technology and better weapons, but they were learning something about humans that the predecessors had tried to warn them about. Humans understood that sometimes you had to be willing to die to win. Lisa slammed into the hull of a Xinthian cruiser, her magnetic boots locking her in place. She could see other Marines hitting their targets across the fleet. She activated the first mining charge, set it for a 5-second delay, and kicked off toward the next ship. She was 50 meters away when the charge detonated. The nuclear explosion ripped through the Xinthian cruiser's armor like paper. The ship's fusion reactor breached a half-second later, adding its energy to the blast. The explosion washed over Lisa's suit, and she felt the heat sensor's red line. Her left arm burned, but the suit held. Barely. She hit the second cruiser and placed her final charge. This time she wasn't fast enough. The Xinthian point defense systems had adjusted, learning from the first attack. The beam caught her as she pushed off, cutting through her suit's power pack. Lisa Grant tumbled into space, her systems failing, and watched her final bomb detonate. 2 ships down. 12 Marines from her squad had made it to their targets. 12 nuclear explosions bloomed against the black. 6 Xinthian warships died in the first 3 minutes of combat. On the bridge of the frontier's edge, Kyle Brennan held onto his command chair as the ship shook itself apart. They were venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches. The artificial gravity had failed and loose objects floated through smoke and sparks. Nina Hayes was still at her station, held in place by her safety harness, calling out targets even though half their weapons were already destroyed. "Xinthian cruiser coming about, targeting our reactor," Nina said, her voice clinical despite the blood running down her face from a gash on her forehead. "Helm, ram them," Kyle ordered. The helmsman, a young man named Chris who had just turned 23 last week, didn't hesitate. He fired the maneuvering thrusters and aimed the dying colony ship at the Xinthian cruiser. The Frontier's Edge had been designed to carry colonists, not fight wars. It was big, slow, and ungainly. But it had mass, and mass plus velocity equals force. The 2 ships collided at relative speeds exceeding 1,000 meters per second. The Frontier's Edge crumpled like foil, its forward sections disintegrating. But the Xinthian cruiser fared worse. The human ship's bulk drove through its midsection like a spear, breaking the alien vessel in half. Both ships began to break apart, spilling air and bodies and debris into the void. "Abandon ship. All hands abandon ship," Kyle transmitted on every frequency. The escape pods began launching, each one carrying 20 to 30 people. 10,000 colonists reduced to survivors fleeing in all directions, hoping the Xinthians would be too busy to hunt them all down. Kyle stayed on the bridge. So did Nina. So did Chris at the helm, even though there was no more ship to helm. They stayed because someone had to keep transmitting the warning, keep telling the story of what happened here, keep showing the Xinthians that humanity would not surrender. Vexthera watched his fleet burning and felt something he had not experienced in his 300 years of life. Fear. These primitives had destroyed 6 of his 12 ships in less than 5 minutes. They had done it with inferior weapons and suicidal tactics. They had done it because they refused to accept that they had lost. "Pull back. All ships retreat to 2,000 meters. Target the escape pods," Vexthera ordered. His tactical officer looked at him in shock. "Commander, that violates the galactic conventions. Targeting escape pods." "Do it!" Vexthera screamed. His carefully maintained composure was gone. These humans had to be exterminated. All of them. Every last one. They were too dangerous to be allowed to live. The remaining Xinthian ships began targeting the escape pods. The humans had no shields, no weapons, no way to defend themselves. The slaughter took 12 minutes. 6,000 more humans died. Their escape pods cracked open like eggs, spilling bodies into space. But 4,000 survived. 4,000 pods scattered in all directions, activating distress beacons, transmitting recordings of the battle, telling everyone who would listen what had happened, what the Xinthians had done, what humanity had done in response. On the shattered bridge of the Frontier's Edge, Kyle Brennan recorded one final message before the life support finally failed. Nina floated beside him, unconscious but still breathing. Chris was dead at his station, killed by debris from the collision. "This is Captain Kyle Brennan of Earth's colonial ship Frontier's Edge," he said, his voice rough from smoke inhalation. "We came in peace. We had no weapons that could threaten them. We had no desire for war. But the Xinthian Empire attacked us without provocation. They demanded our surrender and enslavement." He coughed and blood came up. Something inside him was broken. He didn't have much time. "We fought back with everything we had. We lost, most of us are dead, but we made them pay for it. We made them bleed. And I want everyone listening to know this. We are humanity. We came from a world where everything tried to kill us, and we survived anyway. We built civilizations from nothing, reached for the stars against impossible odds, and refused to give up even when extinction was certain." The air was almost gone now. Kyle felt his vision darkening. "If you're Xinthian and you're listening to this, know that you started something you cannot finish. Humanity will survive. Humanity will remember, and humanity will come for you." He slumped forward in his chair as the darkness took him. The transmission continued broadcasting automatically, repeating his final words over and over into the void. The message reached the Great Archive 3 days later, carried by the Galactic Council's faster-than-light communication network. Ambassador Curran played it before the assembled council, her crystalline form glowing with an emotion that the younger species couldn't identify. It wasn't satisfaction at being proven right. It was grief. "The predecessors warned us," she said quietly, her voice carrying through the chamber. "They told us what would happen if we challenged the humans. We did not listen. The Xinthians did not listen. And now 6,000 humans are dead, along with thousands of Xinthians. This is just the beginning." A council member from the Vraxian collective spoke up, his multiple mouths forming words in complex harmony. Surely this was an isolated incident. The humans cannot threaten the entire galaxy. They are one species on one world with primitive technology. Corinne turned to face the speaker, and for the first time in her long life she felt anger. "You still don't understand. It's not about their technology. It's about what they are. Every species in this council achieved space travel through cooperation and peace. We evolved past our violent tendencies before we reached the stars. But humans? They brought their violence with them. They brought their stubbornness, their refusal to accept extinction, their willingness to die rather than submit. And now they know we're out here." She gestured at the view screen, showing Kyle Brennan's final words frozen on his dying face. That human promised that his species would survive and remember and come for revenge. Do you think he was bluffing? Do you think humanity will forgive what was done to them? The council chamber fell silent. In that silence, deep in Xinthian space, Commander Vexithera made a decision that would seal his empire's fate. He sent a message to the Xinthian High Command with a single recommendation. The warning reached Earth 8 months after the Battle of First Contact. The deep space monitoring stations picked up the transmissions from the surviving escape pods, including Captain Brennan's final message. The world listened to a dead man promise revenge against an enemy they had never known existed. Then came the second warning. A Galactic Council monitoring station, sympathetic to humanity's plight, transmitted faster-than-light data showing 300 Xinthian warships heading toward Earth. Estimated arrival time was 2 years. The message included detailed scans of Xinthian weapons capabilities, shield technology, and tactical doctrine. It also included something else, a copy of the predecessor's warning about humans and a simple note from Ambassador Corinne. "You are what we feared you would be. Now show us if that is enough." The United Nations Security Council held an emergency session in New York. For the first time in human history, every nation agreed on something. They were going to war, and they were going to win or die trying. General Frank Holland took command of Earth's unified military. He was 68 years old, a veteran of 3 different wars, and had a reputation for winning impossible battles through sheer ruthlessness. He stood before the combined military leadership of Earth and said something that would define humanity's approach to galactic warfare. "We can't match their technology. We can't match their numbers. We can't match their experience, but we can match their brutality and exceed it. We're going to do things that will make us monsters in the eyes of the galaxy. We're going to do them anyway because the alternative is extinction." Project Retribution began immediately. Every nation contributed resources, scientists, soldiers, and industrial capacity. The world's economy shifted entirely to war production. Factories that made cars began making missiles. Research labs that studied medicine began studying biological weapons. Universities that taught engineering began teaching how to kill aliens more efficiently. Dr. Claire Bishop led the Biological Warfare Division. She was 45, had won 2 Nobel Prizes for genetics research, and cried herself to sleep every night over what she was creating. The Galactic Council had provided detailed information about Xinthian biology as a gesture of goodwill. Claire used that information to design pathogens that would kill Xinthians while leaving humans untouched. They breathe oxygen like we do, but their cellular structure is completely different, she explained to her team. We can create viruses that will attack their immune systems, bacteria that will dissolve their flesh, chemical compounds that will shut down their nervous systems. We have 2 years to make them regret ever hearing about Earth. Her team worked 18-hour days. They tested on tissue samples provided by the Council, refined their weapons, and tried not to think about the fact that they were preparing to commit genocide on a scale that made Earth's worst atrocities look gentle by comparison. Commander Jake Morrison oversaw the construction of Earth's war fleet. He had been a Navy captain before first contact, commanding aircraft carriers in the Pacific. Now he designed something entirely new. Earth didn't have faster-than-light travel yet, but they could build ships that would make the frontier's edge look like a toy. The warships had names like Vengeance, Retribution, Fury, and Hatred. They were ugly, brutal machines designed for one purpose. Every ship carried nuclear weapons, kinetic kill vehicles, chemical weapons, and biological payloads. Every ship had a self-destruct mechanism that would turn it into a massive bomb if needed. Every ship was designed with the assumption that it would only make one trip into combat. We're not building a fleet, Jake told his construction teams. We're building bullets. Use them once, use them well, and make every shot count. The most controversial project was led by Dr. Alan Ross, a neurologist who had spent his career studying human cognition. His project was simple in concept and terrifying in execution. Make humans better at war by directly modifying their brains. We can increase reaction times by 300%, Alan explained to the ethics committee that tried to shut him down. We can enhance pattern recognition, tactical thinking, and decision-making under pressure. We can make soldiers who think faster, react quicker, and process information better than any human in history. The procedure has a 60% fatality rate, and survivors will never be completely human again. But we need this. The ethics committee voted to allow the program. They had no choice. The alternative was extinction. Volunteers lined up by the thousands. Veterans of Earth's wars, young soldiers who had never seen combat, police officers, athletes, and ordinary citizens who wanted to do something to save humanity. They all knew the risks. They all volunteered anyway. Among the volunteers was Nina Hayes. She had survived first contact in an escape pod, floating in space for 3 weeks before a rescue ship found her. She had watched Captain Brennan die, watched Pete and Lisa and 6,000 others sacrifice themselves. She refused to sit on Earth while another alien fleet came to finish what the Xinthians started. The procedure took 6 hours. Nina lay on the operating table while nanomachines rewired her brain, building new neural pathways and enhancing existing ones. The pain was beyond description. 40% of patients died on the table, their brains unable to handle the modifications. 20% survived but lost their minds, trapped in psychotic breaks they never recovered from. 40% came out changed, enhanced, better. Nina was one of the 40%. When she woke up, the world was different. She could see patterns in data that had seemed random before. She could calculate trajectories and tactical solutions faster than any computer. She could process multiple streams of information simultaneously without confusion. But she also felt disconnected, as if part of her humanity had been burned away in the process of becoming something more. "How do you feel?" Dr. Alan Ross asked, monitoring her brain activity on his screens. "Like a weapon," Nina said quietly. "Like something you point at the enemy and fire." "That's exactly what you are now," Alan replied, not unkindly. "I'm sorry, but that's what we need." Nina was given command of Earth's defense fleet. She was 31 years old, the youngest fleet commander in human history, and had cognitive enhancements that made her the most dangerous tactical mind humanity had ever produced. She studied every recording of the first contact battle, analyzed every Xinthian tactic, and prepared strategies that violated every rule of warfare the Galactic Council had ever written. They expect honor, she told her officers during a strategy session. They expect formal engagements, declared battles, rules of war. We're not giving them any of that. We're going to hit them with everything at once. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, kinetic weapons, and psychological warfare. We're going to make them wish they had never heard of Earth. The months counted down. Earth transformed into a fortress world bristling with weapons platforms, defense grids, and ships ready to launch. Every human knew what was coming. Children practiced evacuation drills. Cities built massive underground shelters. Hospitals trained to handle mass casualties. The entire species prepared for a battle that would decide whether humanity survived or joined the countless extinct species scattered across the galaxy. Ambassador Curran watched from the Great Archive as Earth prepared for war. She sent regular reports to the Galactic Council, describing the preparations, the weapons, the modifications to human soldiers. The Council was horrified by what humanity was doing to itself. They offered aid, resources, even military support. Earth refused all of it. We'll win this on our own or we'll die on our own, General Holland transmitted back. We don't need your help. We need you to stay out of our way and remember that we didn't start this war. 6 months before the Xinthian fleet would arrive, humanity completed its final preparations. The war fleet was ready. The biological weapons were ready. The enhanced soldiers were ready. And Earth's population waited with a mixture of fear and grim determination. Nina Hayes stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Vengeance, and looked at the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. She thought about Captain Brennan and his final words. She thought about the 4,000 survivors still floating in space, waiting for rescue that might never come. She thought about what humanity was about to do and what it would cost them. They're coming to exterminate us, she said to Jake Morrison, who stood beside her as her second-in-command. They think we're just animals that got lucky in the first fight. They think they can wipe us out and go back to their empire like nothing happened. What are we going to show them? Jake asked. Nina's smile was cold and sharp, more predator than human. The enhancements had changed her in ways that went beyond mere cognition. She had become something that scared even herself. We're going to show them what happens when you try to exterminate humans. We're going to show them that we don't just fight back. We fight dirty, we fight mean, and we fight until there's nothing left of us or them. We're going to show them why the predecessors left that warning. The Xinthian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, exactly on schedule. 300 warships, more than enough to sterilize a planet. They expected to find a primitive world with... The Xinthian fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 300 warships arranged in a battlesphere designed to maximize firepower while minimizing vulnerability. Commander Vexithara was not leading this expedition. He had died in disgrace after losing half his fleet to primitives. The new commander was High Admiral Krelnax, a military genius with 500 years of experience and victories across 40 star systems. He expected to find Earth's defenses scattered and weak. Instead, his sensors showed something that made him pause. The human homeworld was surrounded by thousands of weapons platforms, defense stations, and warships. Not elegant vessels like the Frontier's Edge had been, but brutal, ugly machines that looked like they had been designed by someone who understood only violence. Analysis, Krelnax ordered his tactical officer. The humans have constructed approximately 2,000 combat vessels in orbit around their planet. Mass railgun platforms on their moon. Energy weapons on orbital stations. Nuclear missile batteries distributed throughout their system. And something else. The tactical officer's voice wavered. They have weapon signatures we don't recognize. Biological containment pods, chemical dispersal systems. They've turned their entire system into a weapons platform. Krelnax studied the displays. 2 years. The humans had accomplished all this in just 2 years. His species had taken centuries to reach this level of militarization. How was this possible? He was about to find out that when you threaten humans with extinction, they don't waste time with politics or committees or debates. They simply arm themselves and prepare to take as many enemies with them as they can. Open communication channels. Let them know we will accept their surrender, Krelnax ordered. He still believed this would end without significant combat. The Xinthian Empire had never lost a war. The response came not from Earth's government but from Nina Hayes, Fleet Commander of Humanity's Defense Forces. Her face appeared on the view screen, and Krelnax felt a moment of instinctive unease. Her eyes were wrong somehow. Too focused, too calculating, lacking something essential that marked a sentient being as alive rather than merely operational. This is Fleet Commander Nina Hayes of Earth Defense Command. You are trespassing in Sol system. You will turn your fleet around and leave immediately, or we will destroy you. Krelnax almost laughed. Commander Hayes, we have 300 warships. You have no faster-than-light capability, inferior weapons technology, and no combat experience beyond your single skirmish with Commander Vexthara's patrol fleet. Surrender now, and we will grant mercy to your civilian population. You killed 6,000 of our people, Nina said, her voice flat and emotionless. You came to our system to exterminate our species. You think we're going to surrender? You don't understand humans at all. We're not like you. We don't surrender. We don't negotiate when threatened with extinction. We burn everything down and make sure you burn with us. She cut the transmission before Krelnax could respond. The High Admiral stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then turned to his weapons officer. Destroy their orbital platforms. Show them what happens when primitives threaten the Empire. The Xinthian fleet opened fire with their energy weapons, targeting the nearest human defense platforms. The beams crossed the distance between fleets in seconds, and Krelnax expected to see the platforms disintegrate. Instead, they held. The humans had shields, primitive ones, barely functional but enough to absorb the first volley, and then the humans fired back with everything they had. 2,000 nuclear missiles launched simultaneously from platforms across the Sol system. Not the small tactical weapons the Xinthians were familiar with, but massive strategic warheads, each one capable of destroying a city. The missiles had no advanced guidance systems, no sophisticated AI. They were just big, dumb, fast weapons that carried extinction in their warheads. The Xinthian point defense systems engaged, shooting down hundreds of missiles, but there were too many. The humans had built them knowing most would be destroyed. They only needed a few to get through. A dozen nuclear warheads detonated against Xinthian shields, overloading them with pure thermal energy. 3 warships lost their shields entirely. That's when Nina unleashed her real weapons. The Biological Warfare Division's creations were loaded into specialized missiles that punched through the weakened shields and embedded themselves in Xinthian hulls. They detonated, releasing clouds of engineered viruses and bacteria into the ship's atmospheres. The Xinthian crew started dying within minutes. The pathogens that Dr. Claire Bishop had designed were brutally efficient. They attacked Xinthian cellular structures, broke down their immune systems, and liquefied their internal organs. The ship's medical systems had no defense against weapons that had never existed before in galactic history. 3 Xinthian cruisers went dark, their crews dead at their stations. The ships drifted, still functional, but crewed only by corpses. What are they doing? Krelnax screamed. These weapons are banned by every galactic convention. This is genocide! His communication officer looked at him with fear in all 4 eyes. Sir, they don't care about galactic conventions. They're not part of the galactic community. They're just trying to survive. The human fleet advanced, and Krelnax finally understood what he was facing. These weren't civilized beings fighting a war with rules and honor. These were cornered animals fighting for their lives, and they had no limit to what they would do to survive. Nina Hayes watched the tactical display with inhuman focus. Her enhanced mind processed thousands of data points simultaneously, calculating trajectories, predicting enemy movements, and adjusting strategies in real time. She was barely aware of Jake Morrison standing beside her, barely aware that she had stopped thinking of herself as human and started thinking of herself as a weapon system. Deploy the chemical payloads, she ordered. Target the cruisers on the left flank. Prepare ramming protocols for ships that lose weapons capability. Commander, ramming protocols mean we're ordering those crews to die, Jake said quietly. I know, Nina replied without emotion. They volunteered. They knew what this would cost. Execute the order. Across Earth's fleet, ships loaded with chemical weapons accelerated toward the Xinthian formation. Their pilots knew they weren't coming back. They knew their ships would be destroyed by enemy fire or by the impact itself. They did it anyway because that's what humans do when faced with extinction. They refused to give up. The chemical weapons were based on compounds designed to work in Xinthian atmospheres. When they detonated, they released nerve agents that shut down Xinthian neural systems. More ships went dark. More crews died choking at their stations, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to do anything but die. Krelnax ordered his fleet to retreat to maximum engagement range, trying to create distance from these insane primates. But the humans had prepared for that too. Kinetic kill vehicles, essentially massive chunks of metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, had been launched hours before the battle even started. They were too fast to dodge and too numerous to shoot down. They slammed into Xinthian ships with the force of nuclear weapons, punching through armor and shields through sheer kinetic energy. The battle raged for 18 days, not 18 hours. 18 days of continuous combat as humanity threw everything it had at the Xinthian fleet. The humans lost ships by the dozens, but they had built their fleet knowing every vessel was expendable. They had built it knowing that survival meant being willing to sacrifice everything. Dr. Claire Bishop watched the battle from Earth's command center and wept. Her biological weapons were working exactly as designed. The Xinthian death toll was in the hundreds of thousands. She had created plagues that would make her name synonymous with genocide for the rest of galactic history. But the alternative was humanity's extinction, so she watched and wept and did nothing to stop it. General Frank Holland coordinated Earth's defenses from deep bunker beneath the Pacific Ocean. He was 83 days into the battle without sleep, kept functional by stimulants and sheer stubbornness. He watched the casualty reports come in. 3 billion humans dead from Xinthian orbital bombardments. Another billion in shelters that might not hold much longer. But the Xinthian fleet was down to 90 ships from 300 and they were retreating. "They're breaking," Holland said to his staff. "They thought this would be easy. They thought we would fold. They don't understand that humans have been fighting extinction since we climbed down from the trees. This is what we do. This is what we've always done." On the bridge of the Vengeance, Nina Hayes coordinated the final assault. Her ship was damaged, venting atmosphere, running on backup power. She had lost 80% of her fleet. But the Xinthian formation was collapsing. They were running. "All ships pursue and destroy. No mercy, no prisoners. Make them extinct," Nina ordered. Jake Morrison grabbed her arm. "Nina, they're retreating. We've won. We can let them go." Nina looked at him, and for a moment something human flickered in her eyes. "If we let them go, they'll come back. They'll bring more ships, more weapons, more determination. The only way to stop this is to make sure they never want to fight humans again. We have to make an example so." The silence after the battle was worse than the fighting had been. Earth's orbital space was filled with debris, both human and Xinthian. Tens of thousands of bodies floated among the wreckage, human colonists and alien warriors all equal in death. The planet below was scarred by orbital bombardments that had killed 3 billion people in a matter of weeks. Nina Hayes stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked at the casualty reports with eyes that no longer cried. The enhancements had taken that from her, or maybe she had simply run out of tears. She had commanded the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Xinthians. She had ordered the use of weapons that would make her name cursed across the galaxy. She had won the battle and saved humanity. But the cost had been measured in souls as well as lives. "The Galactic Council is requesting permission to enter our system," Jake Morrison reported. He looked as tired as Nina felt. He had aged 20 years in the 3 weeks of battle. His hair had gone completely white and his hands shook when he thought no one was looking. "Let them come," Nina said. "We have nothing to hide. Let them see what we had to do to survive." The Council's diplomatic vessel entered Sol system 3 days later. It was an elegant ship, beautiful in the way that things built by species who had forgotten war could be. Ambassador Curran led the delegation, her crystalline form dimmed by grief as she surveyed the destruction. The Council representatives were escorted down to Earth's command bunker, deep beneath what used to be the Pacific Ocean. The ocean above was polluted now, choked with debris and radiation from the battle. It would take decades to clean up, if it could be cleaned up at all. General Frank Holland met them at the entrance. He was 93 days without proper sleep, held together by stimulants and determination. He looked like death warmed over, but his eyes were clear and hard. "Welcome to Earth," he said without warmth. "Forgive us if we're not better hosts. We've been busy fighting for our survival." Ambassador Curran bowed, a gesture of respect among her people. "General Holland, the Galactic Council extends its condolences for your losses and its congratulations for your victory. We come to offer aid in rebuilding and to discuss Earth's place in the galactic community." "We don't want your aid," Holland said flatly. "We didn't want your aid when you offered it before the battle, and we don't want it now. What we want is for you to leave us alone." The Council delegation looked uncomfortable. A representative from the Vraxian collective spoke up, his multiple mouths forming words carefully. General, surely you understand that Earth cannot remain isolated. You have proven yourselves capable of warfare on a scale that threatens galactic stability. The Council must establish protocols. Protocols? Holland's voice was dangerously quiet. You want to establish protocols now? Where were your protocols when the Xinthians attacked the frontier's edge? Where were your protocols when they decided to exterminate our species? You sat in your fancy council chambers and watched while they tried to wipe us out. Now that we've survived, now that we've shown what we're capable of, now you want to establish rules? The Vraxian representative tried to speak again, but Corinne held up a hand to silence him. General Holland is right. The Council failed humanity. We knew about the predecessors' warnings. We knew what humans might be capable of. We chose to do nothing, and 6,000 colonists died because of our inaction. 3 billion more died because we continued to do nothing. We have no moral authority here. She turned to look at Nina Hayes, who had accompanied the delegation down from orbit. Commander Hayes, may I speak with you privately? Nina followed the ambassador to a side room. They stood facing each other, human and alien, warrior and scholar. Corinne studied Nina's face for a long moment before speaking. The enhancements, she said softly. They've taken something from you, haven't they? They've taken everything, Nina replied. I don't sleep anymore. I don't dream. I barely feel emotions. I look at people and see tactical assets or threats. I look at myself in the mirror and see a weapon, not a person. But the enhancements saved humanity, so I can't regret them. I can only regret what I lost. What will you do now? Corinne asked. Now that the war is over? Nina's smile was bitter. The war isn't over. It's just paused. The Xinthian Empire will rebuild. Other species will hear about what happened here and decide they need to eliminate humanity before we become too dangerous. And we'll have to fight them too. The predecessors were right to warn everyone about us. We're not like you. We can't be peaceful because the galaxy won't let us be peaceful. Corinne was silent for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. What if I told you that the predecessors didn't leave because they were afraid of other species? What if I told you they left because they had become like you are now? Warriors so enhanced and modified that they had stopped being truly alive. They mastered the galaxy and found it empty because they had hollowed themselves out in the process. Nina stared at her. Are you saying we're becoming like them? I'm saying you have a choice, Corinne replied. You can continue down this path, modifying yourselves, militarizing your society, turning yourselves into weapons until there's nothing human left. Or you can choose a different path. Not surrender, not weakness, but maybe something in between total war and total peace. Back in the main chamber, the Galactic Council was presenting its formal proposal to General Holland and the representatives from Earth's unified government. The terms were simple. Earth would be granted a 5-light-year exclusion zone. No species would be permitted to enter without permission. Earth would be given access to galactic technology, including faster-than-light travel, in exchange for agreeing to certain limitations on biological and chemical weapons. We're not agreeing to any limitations on our weapons, Holland said immediately. Those weapons saved us. We're keeping them. The council delegates looked uncomfortable, but Corinne spoke up. The council will accept that condition. But we ask that Earth agrees to one thing. Before using such weapons again, you will attempt diplomatic solutions. Not because we demand it, but because you choose to remember that you're more than just weapons. Holland looked at the ambassador for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. We can agree to that. We'll try talking first. But if talking doesn't work, we'll do what we have to do to survive, and no one gets to judge us for it. The treaty was signed 3 days later. Earth became the newest member of the Galactic Council, though everyone understood it was a very different kind of membership than any other species enjoyed. The other species feared humanity and respected them in equal measure. They gave Earth space and technology and asked only that humans try to be civilized before resorting to violence. It was a cold peace, built on mutual respect born from mutual horror, but it was peace. Nina Hayes remained as fleet commander, overseeing the reconstruction of Earth's defenses and the exploration of the exclusion zone. The enhancements never wore off. She never slept again, never dreamed again, never felt quite human again, but she accepted it as the price of survival. Dr. Claire Bishop lived another 40 years and spent every one of them trying to create cures for the diseases she had weaponized. She never succeeded, but the attempt gave her some measure of peace. General Frank Holland retired and wrote his memoirs. The book was titled What We Had to Do. and became required reading at every military academy on Earth. He died at age 93, surrounded by the few friends who had survived the war. Jake Morrison took over as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. He spent his time rebuilding relationships with species who feared humanity and trying to show them that humans could be more than just warriors. It was slow, difficult work, but he believed it was necessary. 20 years after the war, Nina Hayes stood at the memorial that had been built in orbit around Earth. It was a massive structure, visible from the surface, containing the names of every human who had died in the war. 6,000 from first contact, 3 billion from the Second Battle of Sol. All of them remembered, all of them honored. But next to the human names, at Nina's insistence, were other names. Xinthian warriors who had died in the battles. Not the leaders who had ordered the attacks, but the ordinary soldiers who had followed orders and paid with their lives. Nina had argued for years to include them, and finally, the council had agreed. Why did you want their names here? A young reporter asked her during the memorial's dedication. They came to exterminate us. Nina looked at the names, human and alien, side by side. Because they were people too. They made terrible choices or followed terrible leaders, but they were still people. If we don't remember that, if we only see our enemies as monsters, then we become monsters ourselves. The predecessors forgot that. They turned themselves into weapons and lost what made them alive. I won't let humanity make the same mistake. The reporter looked confused, but Nina didn't explain further. She simply stood at the memorial and remembered. Remembered Kyle Brennan and his final words. Remembered Pete and Lisa and all the others who had died in the first battle. Remembered the billions who had died defending Earth. And yes, she remembered the Xinthians too, because that was what separated humans from the weapons they could become.